Ever thought about a war where not a single bullet is fired? Journey into the intriguing epic of the Cold War, a time of intensified ideological and political rivalry. From mid-20th century to its close, two giants, the USA and the USSR, faced off. With the map as our guide, let's focus on nations pivotal during this conflict, such as Cuba, Vietnam, and Germany. This was an era that reshaped the world's geopolitical landscape, and its ripple effects continue to be felt today. Without a shot fired, it's one of history's most influential wars. Observe the nations of keen interest during this period, including Cuba, Vietnam, Korea, and Germany. Our odyssey commences in the wake of World War II, precisely in the year 1945. The globe had just emerged from the gaping jaws of a devastating war, a conflict that left indelible scars on humanity's psyche. The world found itself bifurcated, neatly divided into two major ideological territories, each representing diametrically opposed systems of governance and models. On one side, we had the United States of America, a nation standing tall, symbolizing the virtues of democracy and the principles of capitalism. It was seen as the land of free will, choice, and individual rights. Contrastingly, the side was dominated by the Soviet Union, a nation founded on the ideals of communism. It represented a collective societal structure with state control over resources and means of production. The Soviet Union was the flag bearer, of communism, a beacon for those who believed in the power of the collective over individual rights. Our journey, therefore, begins in this politically charged era, against the backdrop of these two colossal influences. The Truman Doctrine in 1947 was the first noteworthy Cold War event. This American policy aimed to counter Soviet geopolitical expansion during this period. It promised various forms of assistance to all democratic nations under threat from authoritarian forces. It represented a commitment to hinder the spread of communism by supporting democratic principles. The same year brought the Marshall Plan, an initiative to aid Western Europe. This plan was a carefully crafted economic strategy to bolster democratic governments, thereby reducing the attractiveness of communist influence. It was a tangible manifestation of the United States' commitment to global democracy. In the year 1948, the Berlin blockade emerged as a defining moment, marking the first major confrontation in a rapidly changing global landscape. The Soviet Union, in a bold and unprecedented move, strategically blocked the Western Allies' railway and road access to the sectors of Berlin that were under Western control. This was an attempt to squeeze the life out of the vibrant city and challenge the resolve of the Western powers. But, in an extraordinary show of resilience and unity, the West responded. They initiated a massive, unrelenting airlift of vital supplies to the besieged city, standing strong in the face of adversity. This was a significant act of defiance that demonstrated their unwillingness to back down. The West responded with a massive airlift of supplies to the besieged city. We then moved to the year 1950, the year of the Korean War. This was a time of heightened tension and immense struggle, a period that truly tested the resolve of nations across the globe. The war was yet another example of a proxy war, a conflict in which major powers used third instead of fighting each other directly. It began with the Soviet-backed North Korea invading South Korea, driven by ideological differences and political ambitions. This sudden act of aggression plunged the Asian region into chaos, demanding an immediate international response. The counteroffensive was soon led by the United Nations forces, with the United States providing a significant portion of the military strength. Their involvement marked a crucial turning point in the battle dynamics, further escalating the global tension during the Cold War period. This was another proxy war where the Soviet-backed North Korea invaded South Korea before meeting a counteroffensive by United Nations forces, primarily from the United States. The Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, a 13-day confrontation between the United States and the Soviet Union, brought the world the closest it has ever been to a nuclear war. The event unfolded in the most unexpected manner, just as the leaves were changing colors in the fall of 1962. The world, already accustomed to the tensions of the Cold War, was about to witness a political and military standoff of unparalleled proportions. This clash was not a random occurrence. It was the result of a prolonged power struggle between two of the world's most formidable powers. Both nations had been at odds since the end of World War II, their ideological differences acting as fuel to a fire that threatened to engulf the entire planet. The race for nuclear arms had escalated tensions to an unprecedented degree. The Cuban Missile Crisis was a pivotal moment in this high-stakes game. The entire Earth was held hostage by the prospect of nuclear war, an unthinkable devastation that would certainly spell doom for civilization. Every corner of the globe was swept up in a tide of fear and uncertainty. The 13 days of the crisis were filled with suspense, as each decision was scrutinized under the unforgiving lens of potential catastrophe. The crisis symbolized the peak of the Cold War, an intense period marked by ideological differences, arms race, and jostling for global dominance. Fears were heightened as the two superpowers, with their immense nuclear arsenals, stood toe-to-toe. The world watched with bated breath as they engaged in a deadly dance of power and supremacy. Every moment was fraught with tension. Every decision could spell the difference between peace and nuclear calamity. The leaders of these two nations were locked in a delicate dance of power and diplomacy. Their choices and strategies held the fate of the world in the balance. With the weight of the world on their shoulders, they had to navigate through a maze of political intrigue and military strategy to find a solution that would avert total destruction. The crisis was not just about nuclear weapons or political power. It was about the survival of humanity, a test of our collective strength in the face of overwhelming odds. It was also a stark reminder of the precarious nature of our existence and how vital it is to pursue peace and understanding above all else. In the end, it was diplomacy and negotiation that prevailed. The world let out a collective sigh of relief as a solution was found that averted a nuclear catastrophe. This resolution marked a significant turning point in the history of the Cold War. It underscored the value of diplomacy and how it is our collective desire for peace that will determine the Vietnam War, a crushing conflict that began in 1965, saw the United States deploying its military might in support of South Vietnam in a desperate struggle against the communist North Vietnam. The North was in turn staunchly backed by the Soviet Union, a superpower that was keen on spreading its communist ideology across the world. This conflict was not merely a localized struggle, though. Instead, it represented a colossal clash between two divergent ideologies. Democracy, represented by the United States, and communism, exemplified by the Union. It was a complex, protracted, and bitter struggle that had profound implications for the world. Even as the war raged on, it further intensified the already simmering Cold War tensions. The Cold War finally began to thaw with the Helsinki Accords in 1975. This monumental event in the history of global politics represented a significant shift in international relations. For years, the world had been engrossed in an icy standoff with two of the most powerful nations, the United States and the Soviet Union, on adverse ends. The term Cold War symbolized the deep-seated political and military tensions that existed between these two superpowers, constantly threatening the peace of the world with their nuclear arsenal. But the Helsinki Accords signaled a new dawn. It was not just another international agreement. It was a beacon of hope, a bold stride towards fostering peace and reducing hostilities. It marked an era where dialogue replaced threats and understanding superseded mistrust. The Helsinki Accords stood for cooperation, mutual respect among nations, highlighting the importance of peace and diplomacy in a world fraught with tensions. This diplomatic breakthrough was hailed by nations worldwide and marked a strategic turning point in the Cold War. The Accords inspired an environment of détente, fostering better cooperation and understanding between these superpowers. It was an agreement that changed the course of history, shaping the trajectory of international relations in the years that followed. The Helsinki Accords in 1975 was indeed a significant step towards reducing tensions between the US and the USSR. It symbolized a new era of peaceful coexistence and marked the initiation of the thawing process of the Cold War. The ultimate culmination of the Cold War came in 1991. This was after years of mounting tension between two of the world's superpowers, the capitalist United States and the communist Soviet Union. Their ideological clash, underscored by a race for nuclear supremacy, was a defining feature of the second half of the 20th century. This period was marked by proxy wars, political maneuverings, a space race, and an unending threat of mutual destruction. The fabric of global politics was irrevocably altered, and the world watched with bated breath as the balance of power teetered precariously. In the end, the battle of ideologies came to a decisive climax. Sweeping economic reforms aimed at integrating the Soviet Union into the global economy led to a severe crisis. Coupled nationalist movements within its constituent republics, the Soviet Union struggled to maintain its existence. The year 1991 brought the hammer down on the tumultuous era, spelling the end for the Soviet Union. This dissolution signified the victory of capitalism over communism. It was a moment in history that marked the end of an era and changed the world profoundly. To summarize, the Cold War was a unique period in our history, marked by a constant state of political tension and military standoff between the United States and the Soviet Union. Originated with Truman Doctrine and the Marshall Plan, it witnessed events such as the Berlin Blockade, the Korean War, the Cuban Missile Crisis, and the Vietnam War. The war was characterized by ideological clashes, atomic fears, proxy battles, space races, and a nuclear arms race. It was a time of espionage, propaganda, and political manipulations. The era symbolized the battle between capitalism and communism, with the global superpowers vying for dominance, culminating in the dissolution of the Soviet Union. This period had a profound impact on global geopolitics, culture, and technology. We have journeyed through an era of silent battles, proxy wars, and ideological confrontations. It was an era defined by the constant threat of nuclear annihilation, a period characterized by silent warfare where the battlefield was not a physical place, but the minds and hearts of people worldwide. This was the Cold War, a time of high-strung nerves and clashing ideologies. It stands as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, while also serving as a stark reminder of ambition's potentially destructive power. Remember, history is not just about the past. It's a guide to understanding the present and shaping the future.